Saturday was the last day of our 4-day boot camp, which we held right here at on top of the Museum of Modern Art, and it was pretty interesting, mostly because, I mean, the video was quite good. And take a look at VJ World if you want to see what you can teach somebody to do in just 4 days. But what I found particularly interesting was the people who participated, because when I started doing this thing 30 years ago, it was journalists and people in the television business, and even they were reluctant to pick up a camera. Producers don't shoot, cameramen didn't do stories, all that kind of crap. But this week, we had a really interesting kind of eclectic mix of people. There was a sociology professor from Johns Hopkins who wanted to do things in video instead of in research papers. And there was a guy from the FBI who was an FBI agent who wanted to tell the story of what FBI agents do in video. We actually posted his thing on VJ World. There was an animal rights person. It was a very interesting spectrum of people. One of the participants was a guy who was working as an associate producer for PBS, making those mega long documentaries. And he said that he found this thing a liberating experience simply because in the 2 years he's been working for PBS, they haven't produced a damn thing. And the reason is they're always in meetings and they're doing studies and writing up papers and focus groups and planning, and nothing ever gets done. And the agonizing that goes on before anybody actually rolls an inch of tape, even though you don't use tape anymore, is crazy, and it kills creativity. It kills it because you're so nervous about doing anything that you actually never get around to doing anything. And that's because if you're going to use a cameraman, a soundman, producer, big cameras, all that crap, giant edit suites, it costs you a fortune. And if it costs you a fortune, everybody is terrified to do anything. So as a result, nothing ever actually happens. When it does happen, it's a replication of stuff that happened, before. Every show looks exactly the same. I wrote the other day that I used to produce on Sunday morning on CBS. I left there in 1988, and Lisa and I watched the show on Sunday. It looks exactly the way it did 30 years ago, which is crazy because the thing has never changed. And it never changes because everybody's afraid to take a risk. Everybody's afraid to take a risk because the thing is so expensive and everybody's so nervous and they'll get fired and stuff like that. Well, anyway, Lisa's been redoing the apartment here, and I'll show you in a second. We'll just turn around. The workmen are still here. They're getting done. You see the nice new wooden floors and stuff. Anyway, she'd been redoing the apartment, and while she'd been doing it, I had to take all my books out, and then I had to put them all back when the painters left. And one of the books I found was this. You'll see it backwards. It's called The Snow Leopard it's like the Hebrew version, by Peter Matheson. And there's a great story attached to this, and that's what I want to tell you basically, but it relates to this kid from PBS and to the whole television industry in general. When I was in my early 20s, I had this idea that I wanted to be a writer. I want to write. And so I needed something to write about. So I went overland from London to Kathmandu in Nepal. You could do that in those days without getting killed in Iran or Iraq or anything else. They were all pretty safe. And when I was in Milan, I stopped and I bought myself a little portable Olivetti typewriter. And I thought, I'm going to be a writer. It was that like delusion that you have when you're in your 20s, but it looked like kind of a cool life. So I got to Kathmandu and I got myself a room in the Kathmandu guest house on Tamil, which is the main street in Kathmandu. And I got my little typewriter out and I probably had a candle and a bottle of cheap wine. And I sat down and I started to write. Well, I didn't start to write now. I have on my shelf, I have about 20 unpublished novels. If you want one, I'll send one to you. But what I wrote, the first thing I did was I wrote a letter to this guy, Peter Matheson, who wrote The Snow Leopard. The book had influenced me, and it's a great read. And the book has influenced me. That's why I went to Kathmandu, so I could be in the Himalayas, and write about the Himalayas and the Himalayan people and my adventures in Nepal. So instead of writing about that, I sat down and I wrote this long letter to Peter Matheson, the guy who wrote the book. And I go, Dear Mr. Matheson, I read your book. It really influenced me. I left my whole life in New York. I'm sitting here in Kathmandu. I really love your book. I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. And I don't know, it's probably 10 pages. And I mailed it off to him. But the fact that it actually got anywhere from the post office in Kathmandu is a miracle in itself. Anyway, about 3 weeks later, I get this letter back from Peter Matheson, who lives in Switzerland, I think. And it's my letter that I sent to him. Hello, Paul, how are you? So it's a great story. So I get the letter back that I wrote to Peter Matheson, the whole letter, like 10 pages. And on the front, he's written in red, if you want to write, write, but don't write to me. Signed, Peter Matheson. And actually, that's the best advice I ever had. And to this day, I give that advice to filmmakers. If you want to make a film, go make a film. Well, in the days when you had to have a cameraman, a DP, which I think is an insane title, a director, an editor, a producer, associate, all that crap, nobody could do that. Nobody could do it because it's so complicated before you take the first shot. This is no longer necessary. We shoot almost everything now with iPhones. I mean, they shoot in 4K. You can edit on the phone. You can put in graphics. You do anything you want with it. What it does is, remarkably, it gives you the freedom to fail. Being a great writer is about freedom to fail, and trust me, I failed plenty as a writer. Now, the weird thing is, every time I have an idea for a book, I sit down, and I still have this 1912 typewriter, Underwood, that Lisa got me, but I'll sit down when I feel like writing, I'll put paper in, I'll just bing it, a bing it, a bing like that, and maybe it's a piece of crap, maybe it's great, I don't know, nobody knows, mostly it's a piece of crap, but that's where writing comes from. Great novels don't come from meetings at PBS and production meetings and discussions and focus groups. Great novels come from some guy sitting down or some woman sitting down, putting a piece of paper in the typewriter or the word processor and going tong, and maybe it's great and maybe it blows and you don't really know. And in fact, if every time a writer put a piece of paper in a typewriter, it cost $1,000 per piece of paper, nobody would write. And if they did write, every novel would begin, it was a dark and stormy night, because we'd all be terrified. And every novel today would look like Don Quixote, which was the first novel ever written in English, or Spanish. And the reason is that we're all terrified of making a mistake. So I said to the kid from PBS, all right, you gotta eat, you gotta pay your rent, go do this stupid job up there as an AP and go to all your stupid meetings, but in your free time, go take your phone and go make stuff and send it to me. I'm always happy to look at it. I'm telling you, if you have stuff you want to make, send it to me. I'm always looking for new projects. Most of it will be crap, like most of my writing is crap. But every once in a while, you get a hit, and you only get a hit by trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing. That is the essence, by the way, of evolution. For those of you who are not creationists, nature tries and fails and tries and fails and tries and fails. There's a terrific book called Wonderful Life, which is all about the Burgess Shale. It's filled with experiments that evolution failed at, because that's how we ended up where we are today. Failure, 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 a success. Well, you're not going to make great television, video, and film if you go spend your whole life going to meetings and agonizing over what you're going to shoot. You'll make great film and video just by going out and doing it. And if you mess it up, try it again. If you mess it up, try it again, and keep going until you get it right. And the fact that a phone shoots 4K video and edits and puts on graphics and just shares it with the world, that's it, babe. Just go start shooting. So like he said to me, if you want to write, but don't write to me. If you want to make video. But in my case, send it to me. I'm always happy to look, and I'll give you my unvarnished opinion. And that's how it is today. I'll talk to you later.